The black sword light instantly swept across the surrounding, sweeping across several kilometers. It actually killed thousands of players around in an instant. This sword swept across, leaving countless people no time to react. Even if some players activated the damage-free shield or triggered the dodge, none of them were spared and all died. Because this sword came with a 100-point instant death effects. At this stage, if a player does not have instant death resistance, being hit by this sword will instantly fill up the 100% instant death gauge and die instantly. Among these more than 1,000 players, some were besieging the boss, some began to return after seeing Osirios, some were still rushing towards the boss. In just this one moment, these thousands of players were swept by the black sword energy, and their movements suddenly stopped, as if the time of the whole world had stopped. Afterwards, although their bodies did not move, their eyes lost the color of life. Swish, swish. For a moment, these players felt that they had come to a dark area. Where is this? My instant death gauge is 100%, and I was killed by the boss. Why can't I move? Even if I was killed by the boss, I should be resurrected. What the hell is this black place? They were confused, nervous, and soon became afraid. But they couldn't communicate with each other at all. It was as if they were the only ones in the entire dark space. But soon, they heard the system prompts again. You have obtained the blessing of immortality, and you have obtained the upper affix, instant death plus 20.
10.
You have obtained the immortal plating. You have obtained 10 layers of damage-free shield, and 3 layers are restored per second. These 2 system prompts came one after another, leaving thousands of players all confused. What happened? I was killed by the boss, and then I became stronger. Is there such a good thing? Could it be that my golden finger finally arrived? But before they could react, the darkness in front of their eyes dissipated instantly, and what appeared in front of them was the scene when they besieged the boss before. They did not revive, or rather, they did not revive in the hiding place teleportation array, but they revived on the spot, just when they were confused. They were shocked to find that they were completely unable to move. Of course, to be precise, they could not move on their own. Their bodies were stiff and self-centered, and they walked towards an area, apparently to meet up with others, and in the process of moving, a scene that terrified everyone happened. They saw that all the flesh and blood of other people around them, as well as themselves, began to rot and fall off. Although it was in the game, this phenomenon still made them fall into unimaginable fear. They were extremely terrified, but they couldn't react now. They couldn't control their bodies, couldn't speak, couldn't even open the operation panel, and couldn't chat with friends privately. They were completely controlled, and they still retained consciousness. Fight for the undead king. The 20-meter tall skeleton, Great Disaster Hades, holding a more than 10-meter long skeleton giant sword, sneered at this situation. The more than 1,000 players killed by it all became puppets controlled by it, and were given 2 powerful temporary buff states of Undead Blessing and Undead Plating. Under the influence of the skills of the Great Disaster Hades Halls, the flesh and blood of the thousands of players continued to rot, and soon they turned into skeletons. They held various weapons in their hands, wore various armors and robes, and looked like human beings, but only bones were left on their bodies. Wow! At Halls' command, the skeleton puppets of the players controlled by it rushed out one after another, although the boss has a limited range of action. But the players controlled by it do not. Therefore, the original intention of this epic boss, the Great Disaster Hades, was to attract enough players, catch them all in one fell swoop, and then transform them all into its own puppets. Then, a terrifying scene appeared. The dark eyes of the Great Disaster Hades, burning with black fire, looked towards the direction of the ruins of the demon city in the distance. It slowly absorbed all the lifespans of more than 1,000 players in the field, and because it is an epic boss, it absorbs lifespans very quickly. In front of it, there are more than 1,000 controlled players. The skeleton puppets of the family were clearing the way for it and taking the lead. Soon, all the life light balls were absorbed by it. It began to move towards the ruins of the magic city. Under its command, the more than 1,000 player skeleton puppets began to chase and kill the surrounding players with their 20-point instant death affixes and their 10-layer damage-free shield. Under the reinforcement of the boss, other players were no match for those player skeleton puppets at all, and they all scattered like birds and beasts. Some died and some escaped, and anyone who died at the hands of those player skeleton puppets unexpectedly rotted into a skeleton and was transformed into a skeleton puppet. This situation made all the players who still had consciousness want to cry without tears. Really, this boss is really problematic.
Woo, woo.
I thought it had a low IQ, but I didn't expect that I was the one with a low IQ. I should have listened to the official announcement earlier. Now it's over. I've become a clown. Sure enough, Shadow never said anything wrong, damn it. I actually thought Shadow wanted to trick us away so that I could snatch the boss. This group of players regretted it one by one, but at this time, they were not too desperate. After all, although they died once and their lifespan was absorbed by the boss, they look safe now. There are 20 points of instant death affixes, and a maximum of 10 layers of shields that recover 3 layers per second when they kill other players. It's like they are cheating. Although they are not controlling it themselves, but they still feel an unprecedented sense of pleasure. However, the thing that really makes them desperate is about to happen, because they soon discover that they seem to be unable to change back, and Just outside the ruins of the Magic City, the Great Disaster, Hades Halls was showing his power, enslaving more than 1,000 skeleton puppets and constantly chasing and killing the surrounding players. Qinfeng had already returned to the Evil Spirit Academy with the light and shadow crystal that recorded the image of the boss. As soon as he found the Eye of Knowledge, he heard old Zhang was furious. Didn't you tell them not to go? He is a manager. It's fine if he doesn't set an example. But how can he lead the team to send it over? Resurrection. Not even resurrection. Just kick him out of the guild. Qinfeng knew as soon as he heard it that someone in the Sky Guild didn't listen and went to fight the boss and was killed. And old Zhang's reaction surprised Qinfeng a little. No wonder the Sky Guild could develop so strongly in the last life, and even compete with the official Magic City. The rules of this guild are quite strict. Those who don't listen will be kicked out of the guild directly, even if the leader is a manager. There is no room for negotiation. Originally, old Zhang had found 2 other old men to play Mahjong with Big Eyes, and they were playing well. How could he not be angry when this happened suddenly? You know, he finally found a way of entertainment that even Big Eyes could not do anything about. Playing Mahjong. As the saying goes, scientific Mahjong is a dead end, even if there are some tricks to use. The key is it has Big Eyes and will be besieged by 3 old men. So, old Zhang was having a good time. But after hearing that, someone took the lead to find the boss to die after Shadow reminded him, isn't that NT? Listen to me. Fuxi, as the guild manager, led the team to find the boss to die regardless of the lives of the members, and kicked him out of the guild directly. Everyone enter alert status. There is an epic boss attacking outside. Everyone go back to the hiding place and stay honest. When encountering danger, the hiding place is indeed a good barrier against danger. Although old Zhang didn't know what was going on with the boss, he still gave the most correct order to all guild members at the first time. When Qinfeng came back, he saw old Zhang and the old men around him hurriedly leaving. Big Eyes happened to be the only one left. Qinfeng appeared in front of it and took out the light and shadow crystal. Look, what skills does this thing have? Big Eyes was full of desire to explore Mahjong, but facing the president Qinfeng, it still didn't dare to neglect it at all. President. This guy is from the undead royal family. Do you want to consume 60 years of life to query the relevant information of undead royal family? Bam. 60 years. 50% recovery is 30 years. Okay, Qinfeng directly chose to query. The undead royal family is a unique race created by the undead ancient god. Any species can be transformed into the undead race, and those with sufficient strength are the undead royal family. In theory, the undead royal family has eternal life, because when their lifespan reaches 0, they can obtain unlimited lifespan from the undead ancient god, but with the death of the undead ancient god, the undead royal family also needs to extend their lifespan themselves. Each undead royal family has different abilities, but they all have a common skill. That is, it is undead transformation. This skill has a very long cooldown time, more than 7 days. After it is released, corpses in a large area can be transformed into undead. Creatures controlled by the undead king and killed by the undead will also be transformed into undead. After all the undead die, they will still be resurrected as undead within a certain period of time, unless the undead king dies. The undead under its command will never recover. Hearing this series of explanations, Huanfeng narrowed his eyes. Undead transformation. This skill made Qinfeng smell the taste of order. But after all, it is a skill created by the undead ancient god and passed down to the undead king. So it is normal that it contains the power of order. Therefore, if Qinfeng dies in the hands of the boss, he can rely on the divine weapon to resist its transformation. What's more, this skill has a very long cooldown time, and the boss has already let it go, and it is impossible to release it again in a short time. No wonder it has to attract so many players. Because this skill has a long cooldown, it must attract enough players at once to create enough player puppets. That is, the undead. Then, through zombie-like means, it continues to expand. Following, Big Eyes also gave some information tips for the individual Great Disaster Hades Halls. From the material of its weapon, it has a very high instant death effects. From the breath of its eyes, it has nightmare-related abilities and extremely high mental attributes. It has an evil tooth hanging on its waist, which should be a part of some ancient creature. Can periodically remove all the upper scales and upper states on its body. Hearing this news, Qinfeng frowned slightly. He picked out the key points and asked, periodic? How long is it? The big golden eyes blinked. Depending on the quality, the effective interval is different. From the picture of the light and shadow crystal, it is impossible to judge the specific quality of the evil tooth. Really estimated. Its effective interval should be between 3 and 5 seconds. Nima. Qinfeng's face changed slightly. Epic boss. Even he couldn't make it fall into nightmare in a short time. And it was difficult to strip it. In other words, when facing this Great Disaster Pluto Halls, Qinfeng couldn't use the higher level of fixes to skip its phase. Instead, you have to follow the mechanism honestly. What nightmare? What stripping? These affixes will be cleared every 3 to 5 seconds after they are applied, and it is impossible to reach 100%. And because it is impossible to strip, Qinfeng has to avoid the opponent's upper affixes. Fortunately, the Eye of Knowledge continued. However, because the item is too powerful, the upper affix energy surrounding the boss has been disabled. Understood. Qinfeng nodded. There was a hint of playfulness in his eyes, although the boss is very strong and can clear all upper affixes every 3 to 5 seconds. But as a punishment, there is no upper affix energy surrounding it. You know, some boss will stack the upper scale every second, even if you just stand next to it. For example, the Whisper affix of Twin Butterfly Shadow. For example, the Nightmare affix of Nightmare Hell Flower. As long as you are next to the boss, it will continue to stack, but this Great Disaster Pluto Halls, although it has the two abilities of Instant Death and Nightmare, both require attacking to take effect. In that case, then can't I just play it casually? With my invisibility ability, I can easily teach it a lesson. Wunfeng nodded, indicating that he understood. He turned around and planned to attack the Great Disaster Pluto. The Eye of Knowledge shouted from behind, "President, the individual details of this boss are purely free. Remember to tell me your talent when you have time." "Okay, I will definitely do it next time." Qinfeng waved his hand, jumped on Asirios' back, and took off. It was at this time, outside the ruins of the Magic City, on the road leading to the epic boss Great Disaster Pluto House, countless players rushed to flee. Just how anxious they were to grab the boss just now, and now they are as anxious to run away. Everyone realized it. The reminder from Shadow and the official is not wrong. Greed will only bring them disaster. Think about it. We can't even beat the Emerald boss now. How can we beat the epic? Don't you think that the boss is stupid? I thought there was a bug in the game. Fortunately, I listened to Shadow and hesitated for a while. Otherwise, I would have been killed by the boss and turned into a skeleton. Mom, I will definitely listen to Shadow in the future. These players still have a chance to escape, but the players who have been killed by the boss and transformed into undead skeletons soon fell into despair. This includes the young man, Nixie, who was just kicked out of the guild by Lao Zhang. This guy is holding a platinum bow and arrow, transformed into a skeleton, and is chasing a team of players. Originally, he thought the situation was not too bad. After all, he is now chasing others, not others chasing him. But soon, he saw that when they were chasing the players, the 20-meter tall epic skeleton boss, holding a giant sword, directly targeted a player skeleton and slashed with one sword. The boss's sword came with a 100-point instant death affix. Even if the player skeleton had a shield to avoid damage, it could not resist it at all and died again on the spot. After death, the player's life exploded again and was absorbed by the boss. Then, Fuxi and other player skeletons were horrified to see that the player skeleton that was killed once stood up again a few seconds later, and it was still in the form of a skeleton. What's going on? It's still a skeleton after death. If this boss lets us die, won't we keep exploding our life until our life explodes and we die completely? The Great Disaster Hades is using his player skeletons to cross regional restrictions. For it, what does it have to do with it whether these players live or die? And this discovery made all the players who had turned into skeletons around them fall into a kind of cold despair. They seemed to be in big trouble. Could it be that we can only get rid of this state by killing the boss? When they thought about it, they were all confused. If they could shout or chat privately, they would definitely shout out at the first time, "Shadow Dad, save me." Just at this time, a young summoner in a gray robe was also not far from the boss, fleeing in a panic. His face was gloomy. Originally, he was trying to lure the boss, but he didn't expect to be discovered. It's okay to be discovered. How dare you come to fight the boss? Is this boss still acting so stupid? Things were beyond his control. Just when he was running away, suddenly, 10 player skeletons came chasing him. What's going on? So many people coming for me. The young summoner was stunned. Of course, he didn't know. He attracted the boss all the way, and the boss had been eyeing him for a long time. He wanted to run. How could it be possible? Get out of here. The young summoner's face darkened, and he raised his hand and summoned a black corrosive wolf. Then the corrosive wolf opened its mouth and sprayed a jet of black corrosive breath, which hit the player skeleton who was rushing in front. Immune, immune, immune. Although the attack frequency of the corrosive breath was very high, but these undead player skeletons all have 10 layers of damage-free shields, and they recover 3 layers per second. This number of damage-free shields can be said to be stronger than Qinfeng's. It is impossible for ordinary players to destroy these skeletons. So, even if he summoned his men to block him, the young summoner still couldn't escape. He was chased and shot by a player skeleton holding a crossbow. The young summoner raised his hand to release the elemental shield and the acceleration on skill to make himself run faster. But it was a pity that all this was useless. After just a few seconds, he was hit 5 times by the player skeletons, and his death meter was stacked to 100%, and he died on the spot, because he was killed by the undead. The young summoner also became an undead skeleton a few seconds later. He still retained his ability as a summoner, but he lost his ability to move. He could only obey the orders of the Disaster King, who was the undead king. Soon, the young summoner was horrified and found that he was walking towards the epic boss involuntarily. He found that his treatment was different from that of other players. Could it be that this boss has noticed me a long time ago? It just used me to come to the gathering place of players? The young summoner was filled with fear. In panic, he wanted to log off immediately. But you are in the undead state and cannot leave the game. But Wattfake. The young summoner was stunned on the spot. He couldn't even log off. He realized that he seemed to have really shot himself in the foot this time. And the most important thing now was that he didn't know what this boss was going to do to him. Soon, His flesh and blood corroded and turned into a white skeleton in a robe, and he came to the 20-meter tall Hades with great loyalty. The Hades stretched out his hand and grabbed the young summoner directly in his hand. He lifted it to a position parallel to his own eyes, just like holding a chick. The pair of dark eyes burning with black flames looked at the young summoner. Then he saw. The nightmare gauge began to appear above the young summoner's head, and it rushed to 100% almost instantly. And it was directly stacked up. The kid didn't react at all. He just glanced at the boss's eyes and fell into a nightmare state. At this moment, he seemed to have come to a chaotic, dark, terrifying, and horrifying place. Countless things he feared the most surrounded him, screaming and crying, making him feel like he was in hell. He saw that his flesh and blood were rotting, and even maggots were crawling out of his bones. The maggots bit his flesh and blood and bone, causing him unimaginable pain. In reality, the young summoner was casually discarded by the boss, like a toy that had been played with. After falling into a nightmare, the young summoner screamed, staggered, and rolled around. And suddenly, he was crushed into pieces by a huge white bone foot that fell from the sky. A few seconds later, the young man was resurrected again, and the white bone fragments condensed into a human-shaped skeleton again. Bang! The white bone foot stepped on it again, and it was broken into pieces again. After more than 10 or 20 times, the young man finally did not resurrect again, because all his lifespan had been exploded, and his final lifespan was less than 1 day. In the hellish despair and pain, the young summoner died completely. In the game, he became a pile of scattered bones. In reality, he also recovered from the translucent state and gradually became a hard corpse. This little bug has a long lifespan. The great disaster, Hades, Halls coldly absorbed the balls of life that burst out of the young summoner. He actually has a lifespan of more than 1,000 years, which is the reward he got in advance from the Sky Snake organization. Originally, this young man thought that after the matter was accomplished, he could go to North America and become one of the leaders of the Sky Snake organization, but he didn't expect he has no chance. Moreover, this guy died. Just before he died, he was played by the Great Disaster Hades. First make him fall into a nightmare. Then the Great Disaster Hades can view his memory in the past few days. So, in the normal strategy of this boss, you must not look at it. At this time, the Great Disaster, Hades learned 2 important pieces of information from the young summoner's memory in recent days. One is this young summoner wants to lure it here just to deal with an assassin. The other is that human assassin is very strong. But it is obvious. The young summoner has never seen Qin Feng in person, so he has no accurate concept of how strong Qin Feng is. The most important thing is that the Great Disaster Hades learned his memory, but only learned about his experience, not his thoughts. Therefore, this epic boss can only judge the strength of the assassin player named Shadow based on the conversation between the young summoner and the Sky Serpent organization. And in their conversation, they did not involve a lot of specific information about Qin Feng. For example, Qin Feng is already level 25. For example, Qin Feng has killed the diamond boss in seconds. For example, Qin Feng can launch an attack without removing the invisibility, and so on. The Great Disaster Hades does not know. This epic boss only knows that the young summoner and the Sky Serpent organization are all very afraid of the human assassin. So, the Great Disaster Hades sneered, just to deal with a small assassin. You lured me all the way here. You are really making a fuss? My anti-stealth level has reached level 18. What can a small assassin do to me? At this time, although this boss has collected a huge amount of life, it is extremely difficult to advance because it is an epic grade. The life of such a small player is completely a drop in the bucket. Therefore, the idea of the Great Disaster Hades is to kill into the city ruins where human players from Blue Star gather. First expand his undead subordinates, and then rule this ruin. In this way, he can have an endless supply of life. Boom! The Great Disaster Hades held a huge bone sword, with a pair of skeleton eye sockets, and a faint black fire burn. He jumped and slashed again to 300 meters away, continuing to expand his range of action. The fate of the young summoner made all the surrounding skeletons who were transformed into the undead extremely frightened. How is it possible this boss can really kill us infinitely and explode our lifespans? Don't kill me. I was wrong. Who will kill this boss? It's over. Just now the shadow came, but left again. Obviously, even the shadow is not the opponent of this boss. How stupid am I to challenge this epic boss? Because the players gathered before. They all ran towards the boss, so there are many players on this road. In a short period of time, the number of player skeletons transformed into the undead has reached 2. There is no doubt that the difficulty of attacking the Great Disaster Pluto Halls at this time has far exceeded the time when they stayed in the Disaster Sea, honestly. All the player skeletons who have been transformed into the undead are now completely in boundless despair. It's over. Everything is over. The entire ruins of the Demon City will be flattened by this boss, and we are all accomplices. In contrast, other players are fleeing at the fastest speed along the way. They are scrambling to flee in the direction of the ruins of the Demon City. They have friends and even lovers who have been transformed into undead, but they basically dare not stay, and they run away one by one. My love, don't worry. I will come to revive you when I become stronger. God knows how desperate those players who turned into skeletons were when they saw their lovers fleeing. The players fled in all directions. Fortunately, those player skeletons who were turned into undeads did not get the speed bonus, and they seemed unable to use the items in their backpacks. So many players were able to distance themselves from the group of player skeletons with their mounts, running farther and farther. At the same time, Tianfeng was rushing back to the boss when he just set out. He received a private message from Wanye Weiyu. Master, the situation is very tricky now. Our official has sounded the highest alert. What should we do next? Wanye Weiyu represented the official, and the official naturally knew that Qinfeng had gone back, so it was speculated that Qinfeng was probably not the opponent of the boss. So he chose to retreat, but the official couldn't retreat. Therefore, they wanted to learn more about the boss from Qinfeng. At the same time, tens of thousands of warriors from the official Magic City have gathered outside the Magic City ruin, and more people are coming from all directions. They must prevent all the player skeletons transformed into the undead from entering the range of the Magic City ruins. This group of official players are well trained and work as a team. If they come into contact with the undead player skeletons, they can focus fire on the single unit at the fastest speed. However, after receiving her private chat, Qinfeng directly replied, "It doesn't matter. I will take action." Wanye Weiyu was a little confused. "Master, you are not. You went and came back." Qinfeng was speechless. "Just now I just went to observe the situation and made some preparations. What you have to do next is to evacuate all the players near this direction, and don't give the boss the opportunity to threaten me with a civilian." Obviously, Qinfeng is about to take action, but he doesn't want anyone to interfere with the boss battle. When Wanye Weiyu heard this, her face changed slightly. She understood what Qinfeng meant. Threatening with civilians. Does it mean that this boss has a high IQ? If he is dying, he may use civilians to threaten the Shadow God to let him go. No matter what she thought, she had already believed in Qinfeng's words. She was not from the Sea City ruins. The people there had never seen Qinfeng, so it was normal for them not to believe him. But the officials in the Magic City had already cooperated deeply with Qinfeng. So, she quickly reported Qinfeng's words to the higher-ups. Qinfeng rode Osiris and soon flew to the northeastern edge of the Magic City ruins. He saw that many official players were evacuating the crowd below. Daxia Air Force, Magic City Artillery Regiment, Magic City Navy, Magic City Public Security, Magic City Armed Forces. Usually, these guild members are scattered in various places to level up, but now the highest alert has been sounded. So let them gather together as quickly as possible and prepare to face the danger. Originally, they planned to stop those undead players, but with the message from Shadow, they turned to evacuation work to ensure that there were no players within a dozen or 20 kilometers of the northeastern edge of the ruins of the Magic City. Qinfeng looked down from a high place and looked at the scorched earth plain in front of him. The area near the ruins was almost evacuated soon. But outside, there are still many players fleeing. More than 100 kilometers away is the 20-meter-high Great Disaster Hades, with more than 2,000 undead player skeletons leading the way in front, rushing towards the ruins of the Magic City. Blend into the darkness? When seeing the tall figure of the boss appear in the distance, Qinfeng and Osirios' stealth level it has reached the highest level of 56. Qinfeng saw that many players who were transformed into undead were still chasing ordinary players, but he ignored them. Even Qinfeng could hardly kill these undead player skeletons in large numbers. Moreover, even if they were killed, they could be resurrected in a few seconds. There is no need to pay attention to these undead, just deal with the boss directly. Osiris remained invisible and rushed through the sky, facing the epic boss. This guy didn't smile frivolously. He knew that the guy in front had the epic boss characteristics and was extremely powerful. Suddenly, an invisible shadow blade hit the head of the Great Disaster Hades without any sign. 25. 48 will weak point attack. In Qinfeng's vision, a damage number of more than 200,000 appeared above the boss's head. It's worthy of being a level 30 epic boss. The damage of my Shadow Blade has exceeded 5 million with full damage increase, but it only dealt 250,000 damage, which shows that the damage reduction of this boss has reached 95%. And this guy has a health of 450 million. It is conceivable how difficult it was for the top players of the Magic City in the previous life to besiege this epic boss. Of course, the difficulty is not mainly in the numbers, but in the mechanism. After all, the total output of a team of the top players of the Magic City at that time can be compared with Qinfeng now. The key lies in the two higher level affixes of Instant Death and Nightmare. The instant death affix of this boss has reached 100 points. That is to say, if there is no instant death resistance, it is impossible to participate in the siege of this boss. In addition, once you are hit by the instant death scale, you can't continue to fight. You can only retreat and let others take over. Otherwise, once the combatants die, they may be resurrected as undead. If they are really undead, resurrected by the opponent. According to Qinfeng's command thinking, it is necessary to seamlessly control all those undead. If 3 teams participate in the strategy, they will fight against the boss in a round-robin manner and handle the mechanism well. They can still kill the boss, but the difficulty is indeed very high. If I only throw Shadow Blades, I can throw 3 per second, with a second damage of about 760,000. Qinfeng is not in a hurry to output. The first thing he has to do is to familiarize himself with the skills of the boss. So after throwing a Shadow Blade, He let Osirio fly behind the opponent and threw another Shadow Blade. Every time he threw a Shadow Blade, he would change his position. So, the Great Disaster Hades Halls was stunned. Who is hitting me? After the 4th career advancement, Qinfeng's stealth level doubled. With a stealth level of 56, this epic boss couldn't even touch Qinfeng's shadow. In addition, after the 4th career advancement, Qinfeng's attack effects, such as Shadow Blade, all have half the stealth level. That is, 28 stealth level. The Great Disaster Hades couldn't even see Qinfeng's attack effect. It could only feel that its front, back, left, and right parts were being attacked at a very high frequency. The damage is so high. Is this the assassin that the little bug is afraid of? The Great Disaster Hades was instantly shocked. Originally, it relied on the 18 level anti-stealth level and was not afraid of the small human assassin. As a result, the opponent not only did not show up, but also had no attack effects, which made it start to lose blood. Black Death Sword. The mood of the Great Disaster Hades sank, and he swept the huge bone sword in his hand towards the surrounding. Instantly, there was a deadly black sword energy, which spread to the surrounding area for several kilometers. This sword was only aimed at the hostile target, so the surrounding undead player skeletons were not dead. But unfortunately, how could this sweeping sword hit Qinfeng in the sky? Osiris even widened his eyes. Black silk. Where is the black silk? Qinfeng just thought that this guy was serious. But in the blink of an eye, his true colors were exposed. Stupid dragon. Black silk is something we humans have. What does it have to do with you? Qinfeng held his forehead. Although he was making a fuss, Qinfeng's hands were not vague at all, and the shadow blades kept coming out. Swish, swish, swish. 25. For your weak point attack. 25. 65 weak point attack. 25. 61 weak point attack. Qinfeng will definitely hit the weak point when he attacks, although each Shadow Blade only deals 250 goes in damage. Compared to the total HP of the boss of more than 400 million, it is a bit like a mosquito bite. But this mosquito bites too frequently. Moreover, the boss has no idea where this mosquito is. One sword. Not dead. He has instant death resistance. The Great Disaster Hades realized this immediately. After being attacked by Qinfeng, the nightmare and peeling scales have begun to stack on its body. Obviously, the Great Disaster Hades realized that the assassin who attacked it has developed far more than other players at this stage. Not only does the attack have nightmare affixes, it must also have a lot of resistance to a higher level affixes. Fortunately, I have the Old Scourge Snake Fang, which can clear all the upper gauges and upper states on my body every 5 seconds. The Great Disaster Hades looked at his slowly stacking nightmare and stripping gauges and didn't take it to heart. A few seconds later, a dark white light flashed across his body, clearing all the nightmare and stripping gauges on his body. Very good. This human assassin. You have successfully angered me. In the black eyes of the Great Disaster Hades, a faint black fire burned, and 2 dead black rays suddenly spurted out, like 2 black lasers, constantly sweeping around. These 2 rays have the double affixes of nightmare and instant death. Once hit by the rays for more than 2 seconds in a row, they will fall into a nightmare state at the same time as they die. But unfortunately, Qinfeng asked Osirios to keep flying on the back of the boss. No matter how the boss turns, it stays close to the other's back. In this way, the black laser in the boss's eyes can't hit Qinfeng at all. Swish, swish, swish. 24. 99 weak point attack. 25. 22 weak point attack. 24. 86 well weak point attack. Fuck! The Great Disaster Hades released several similar skills in succession, trying to find the assassin hiding around, but the assassin was not hit by any of its skills, and it was like a thorn in the flesh, staring at it and attacking. Even if it has high damage reduction and a lot of blood, it can't stand such a bite. Seeing that in just half a minute, his blood volume has been reduced by nearly 1/10, and the Great Disaster Hades has no choice. He can only use the last trick in the bottom of the box, undead people. Explode. At this moment, the player skeletons, who had been transformed into the undead, discovered that the boss was losing blood. They immediately realized that it was Shadow who took action. This made them happy. If Shadow could kill the boss, they would definitely be saved. Right, but soon, a situation that shocked and despaired them appeared. Under the command of the boss, several of the closest, the player skeletons approached the boss, and then the bones began to swell. 1 second later, they exploded. When a player skeleton exploded, the black fog spread around, instantly covering the surrounding area of hundreds of meters. Qinfeng's Shadow Blade's basic attack distance is only 20 meters. In order to attack the boss, he was relatively close. He was instantly covered by the exploding black fog. 3 explosions. Qinfeng's head was superimposed with nearly half of the instant death scale. Fortunately, Qinfeng reacted very quickly. Pulling Osiris, he quickly retreated to the back and instantly left the boss's 100-meter range. Then, Qinfeng saw. Beside the boss, the several player skeletons that exploded unexpectedly condensed from the black fog and resurrected again. Although they died once and their lifespans exploded, they were not really dead. There is such a method. Qinfeng was a little surprised. In this case, it would be difficult for his skills to hit the boss as long as he attacks the boss. The other party will order the player's skeletons to self-destruct. Sure enough, it still brings me trouble. Fortunately, Qinfeng also has a way to deal with this. If he kills those player skeletons first, it will be useless. After all, Those skeletons will be resurrected soon. But what if Qin Feng lets all those player skeletons fall into the nightmare state? In the nightmare state, they completely lose consciousness and can only crawl on the ground, and they can't obey the boss's order to self-destruct. Before carrying out this plan, Qin Feng did not hesitate. Although those undeads are all players, but now the players have the courage to rob the epic boss. The actual physical attributes must be not low, right? Even if they fall into the nightmare for a few days, they will not die. Even if they really die because of falling into the nightmare, Qin Feng can't do anything about it. If the player skeletons are not controlled, they will keep self-destructing, and Qin Feng will never be able to kill the Great Disaster Hades, and if the Great Disaster Hades is not dead, those people will never be able to recover. In other words, this is Qin Feng's only solution at the moment. Killing the Great Disaster, Hades can save some people. Letting the Great Disaster Hades go, all those people will die, and even more people will fall. Then, it is obvious what to choose. In that case, start killing. Qin Feng just now was just testing. But now, the boss's trump card has been exposed, so Qin Feng has nothing to worry about. It must be said that the Great Disaster Hades' move to make his subordinate spots self-destruct is ridiculously strong. Even Qin Feng, who has a lot of full upper resistance on his body, can't resist a few times. And the undead under the boss's command, there are more than 2,000. If he really goes crazy, it is not impossible for Qin Feng to explode to death. Fortunately, Qin Feng has enough countermeasures. Endless Nightmare. When Qin Feng opened the Endless Nightmare, the 160-meter range around him was full of nightmare energy. He rode Osiris, remained invisible, and quickly circled and flew through the field. Those undead players in the field were all not resistant to nightmares. Under the influence of Qin Feng's Endless Nightmare, they fell into nightmares in groups. The nightmare-like nightmare scene made all those players fall into fear and pain. They crawled on the ground one by one. Even the Great Disaster Hades of the undead royal family could no longer control them. For a while, groups of player skeletons crawled darkly and wailed in pain on the scorched earth, forming a hellish scene. However, at this moment, I caught you. Little fly! The Great Disaster, Hades snorted coldly, suddenly stretched out his hand, and pinched accurately towards the place where Qin Feng was. Didn't expect it. I know nightmare energy very well. I can feel the range of nightmare energy you release, although I can't see you. But in the center of the nightmare energy range, you are. A little assassin fly, like you can be crushed to death with one slap. For a huge boss like this, stepping on it or pinching it with your hands will cause damage. And it is the same as the continuous damage of ordinary attack. Once stepped on or pinched, you will continue to suffer damage from ordinary attacks, but soon, the Great Disaster Pluto was stunned, because it stretched out its hand, originally wanting to pinch a human. But in the end, it pinched a huge monster. Get out! You dead gay? Why are you pinching me? Osirio was pinched by the white bone palm, and couldn't break free for a while. He cursed out loud. Mount? So you're flying in the sky? Well, I'll crush your mount to death first. The Great Disaster, Hades reacted quickly and was about to use force. Qin Feng released a set of skills with his backhand. The Hand of the Robber. The Curse of the Abyss, Withering. Swish. Swish. Take it. At this moment, the Great Disaster Hades felt as if he was hollowed out. At the same time, he just tried to crush Osirio to death, but the result was +4, 75, +4, 59, +4, 66. Wow. Oh, it feels so good, stupid. You still want to crush your grandfather to death? Do you know the value of Diang's impotence technique? Osirio was refreshed. It was always him who was withered before. Now it's someone else's turn. Feng Shui turns around. Cool. For a moment, the Great Disaster Hades Halls was completely stunned. He saw that he pinched hard and pinched out a white bone dragon. And the dragon was so happy. Is this the Curse of the Abyss? Is this reasonable? It directly reduced my attack to negative. Also, what is this immortal thief? It sucked 20% of my attributes. Does this assassin have any shame? The instant death affix of this boss is attached to the Whitebone Giant sword in its hand. The nightmare affix is contained in its eyes, so when it uses the Whitebone Giant hand to pinch people, it naturally has no effect of the upper affix. This time, it can't do anything to Osirio. And after Osirio sneered, he spread his wings and flew, directly opening his Whitebone palm. You are 20 meters tall, and my wings are 20 meters when spread out. Who is bigger? Swish? Blend into the darkness. Qin Feng released his skills again, making Osiris invisible again. For a moment, the area around the giant skeleton boss became silent again. At the same time, Qin Feng's violent offensive finally arrived with the terrifying thunder of destruction, Shadow of Slaying, Grace of Liberation, Instant Shadow Slash, Scarlet Blade. With the mythical skill, Blessing of the Thunder Fairy, Qin Feng's damage has further increased by a large level. Even though the epic boss in front of him has a damage reduction of up to 95%, Qin Feng's set of skills still hit more than 120 million explosive damage, although the damage of a single slash of Instant Shadow Slash is only over 200,000. After all, each Instant Shadow Slash is 9 slashes. Add up to nearly 2 million damage, counting the 15 times subsequent throat cut damage of Grace of Liberation. The total is 30 million, and this is just the damage caused by Qin Feng's body. You know, after activating the Shadow of Severe Death, Xinfeng's total damage will be multiplied by 4 now that we have figured out the boss's methods, who would still play with it with Shadow Blades. In comparison, even the damage of the Scarlet Blade's final move is less than 1 million per time. This is because the boss still has a lot of health, and the Scarlet Blade's final move does not increase the damage too much, but if the boss is at low health, the damage of the Scarlet Blade is more than double that of the Instant Shadow Slash. So, use the Instant Shadow Slash to reduce blood at the beginning, then use the Scarlet Blade to kill. When Xinfeng launched this series of attacks, he took the initiative to cancel the skill duration of Endless Nightmare. After all, after this skill is activated, the boss can detect his position. In the God-Forsaken game, all the buff states can be cancelled by the player themselves, which is quite convenient at sometimes. So, in the eyes of the Great Disaster Hades, his HP plummeted in just 3 seconds. Originally, there were 420 million. Now, there are only 300 million left. After a few invisible Shadow Blades flew over inexplicably, its HP bar turned gray and entered the second stage. Xinfeng was still relatively cautious at this stage. Directly activate the effect of the Sonic Shoe. Burst out at the fastest speed, and instantly left several kilometers away. Osiris was also very alert, with his wings spread, and rushed straight into the sky. Sure enough, when the HP of the Great Disaster Hades Halls was knocked down by exactly 1/3, it suddenly released a roar, accompanied by a pitch-black spherical ripple, which spread several times in succession within 100 meters around. These pitch-black spherical ripples, at first glance, have an instant death effect, spreading 360 degrees around, no matter in the sky or underground. There is no escape. Fortunately, Xinfeng saw the opportunity early and ran away directly, until half a minute later. When Hals's health bar turned red again, that little mosquito should be dead. Hars was thinking this. Suddenly, swish, 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 Shadow Blade flew from an unknown corner again and began to repair blood. In a hurry, this epic boss even called out the language of its own race. How can that little thief be so fast? He was attacking me just now, and he can run 100 meters in an instant. What it didn't know was that Xinfeng ran more than 100 meters. He ran several kilometers in a flash, not to mention that the attack range of the black spherical ripples is only 100 meters. Even if it is 1,000 meters, it can't touch Xinfeng, because the ripples need time to spread. If you watch the ripples continue to spread, Xinfeng can continue to run out. Running fast means you can do whatever you want. You know, no matter how strong this boss was, after being limited to an epic boss, many of its abilities are limited to a range. This range is exactly the level that a team of top players at level 30 can pass with perfect operation. In other words, the spread speed and range of the spherical ripples are absolutely impossible for top players at level 30 to react to. So it is normal for Xinfeng to dodge that skill, and for Xinfeng, after entering the second stage, the difficulty of attacking this boss becomes higher. The reason is, Instant Shadow Slash can't touch the opponent. This boss began to move frequently and quickly, although it is huge. Its speed is really fast, and after entering the second stage, its agility is also partially released. It has become a flexible giant. Fortunately, no matter how fast it is not as fast as Xinfeng. Under the speed suppression, Xinfeng can still catch up with it, but every time he releases the Instant Shadow Slash, only 2 or 3 slashes can hit, because the opponent's position is changing every moment. Next, it is a tense and exciting escape, the Great Disaster. Hades seems to be a little frightened and starts to flee. Xinfeng follows like a shadow, steadily losing blood. It escapes. He chases. It spreads wings. It's a pity that the shadow of the killing shadow can't move. This guy keeps running, and my damage can't burst out. Xinfeng feels a little pity, but he has long been used to it. Epic Boss is not a wooden stake boss. How can it be so stupid? In the first stage, it can be seen that it is a mechanism problem. The speed and agility of this guy are limited, so there is no way to escape quickly. But in the second stage, this guy's combat power is released. In the third stage, the difficulty will be higher, but it is definitely within the range of what a top level 30 player can handle. Xinfeng's current strength is far beyond the top level 30 players in his previous life, so he is not worried, as the two sides continue to chase and flee. The health bar of the Great Disaster Hades dropped to only 1/3, and the health bar was locked in gray again. I let you chase, I'll give you a big wave. The Great Disaster Hades finally waited for this moment. It sneered coldly, and a pair of eyes burst into a faint black fire. But soon, the Great Disaster Hades froze all over. No, why can't I use this skill? It was originally the opening skill for entering the third stage. In its opinion, it would definitely kill the annoying little fly and end this shameful battle. But it found its skill was inexplicably banned. Abyssal Blight Curse randomly banned my 3 highest level skills. This giant skeleton suddenly felt like crying. The Great Disaster? Pluto was completely frozen on the spot. Before it was beaten to the third stage, these skills of its were originally gray, so it didn't notice that this skill was actually banned. Then it looked at the skill bar. It stands to reason that in the third stage, all its skills should become available. But in addition to this opening skill of the third stage, there are 2 other strongest skills, which are also banned. I have never heard of such Abyss Curse skills. The Great Disaster, Pluto was completely dumbfounded. It only knew that there were slowness and silence in the Abyss skills, but definitely not this kind of banned skills. If it was a normal epic boss, forget it. There must be an inviolable affix on it to resist such control effects. Silence is considered control, and banned skills naturally belong to control. But unfortunately, the Great Disaster Pluto Halls just happens to be an abnormal epic boss, because its Old Scourge Snakefang is too powerful, as long as it is carried. Halls will lose the protection of the upper level affix surround, including the inviolable affix. Instead, it is the effect of the Old Scourge Snakefang, which clears all the upper level affix gauges and statuses on the body every 5 seconds. Normally, this will indeed make the Great Disaster Hades stronger, although it has lost the upper level affix surround. The upper level affix value of the surround is not high, which only adds 5 points of instant death and nightmare affixes per second. As for the effect of the inviolable affix, it is to resist control. As an epic boss, Halls' boss template has a high control resistance. When encountering the control effect from the player, it can quickly adapt and invalidate it, and directly immune to the same control. Unfortunately, it met Qinfeng. Qinfeng's Abyss Blight curse skill has reached the ancient level, starting from the epic. There are legends and myths above, and then the ancient times. From this, it can be seen that the grade of this skill is much higher than that of this boss. This makes Halls' control resistance and adaptability to this skill very weak. So, it's not that Halls is too weak. The problem is that Qinfeng is too strong. If it weren't for the effect of the Old Scourge Snakefang, this epic boss would have been beaten into a nightmare state by Qinfeng and cried for his parents. Fortunately, the Great Disaster Hades soon found a blind spot. The duration of the Abyss Withering Curse is 2 minutes. The ban on this skill will end soon. It continued to flee, trying to delay time. But soon, Abyss Withering Curse. Qinfeng then continued with a curse, banning its 3 skills again. And the banned skills were still those 3 skills, who made those 3 skills the highest grade on Hars. This skill cools down so quickly. The Great Disaster Hades Halls was dumbfounded on the spot. The Abyss Withering Curse in his impression has a cooling time of 10 minutes. How come it has cooled down in less than 2 minutes? This assassin's cooling speed exceeds 400%. This is totally unreasonable. How could it know that after Qinfeng's Abyss Withering Curse was upgraded to the ancient level? The basic cooling time was only 100 seconds. And at a cooling speed of 369%, the final cooling time only took 3 seconds. Even if Halls' boss template, resistance and adaptation slowly take effect, and the time of each curse and banned skills is getting shorter and shorter, Qinfeng can completely maintain the effect of the curse. When this huge skeleton boss was cursed and banned again, it fell into a state of confusion. It found that everything that had happened since it encountered the human assassin was completely inconsistent with its cognition and completely subverted common sense. Assassin, let me go. We won't interfere with each other. In that case, I can withdraw from this place and let all the transformed human players return to their original state, otherwise, they will never be able to recover. The Great Disaster Hades Halls, with a faint black fire burning in his dark eyes, sneered at the people around him. Here it comes. Qinfeng's mouth curled up slightly. When the epic boss cannot be defeated, various means will be used to make the players relax their vigilance or beg for mercy. In short, there will be all kinds of conspiracies and tricks. The Great Disaster Hades' current move is naturally coercion. Unfortunately, Qinfeng doesn't buy it at all. Experience tells him that it is best not to believe any of the boss's lies before death. Otherwise, it is likely to cause a big accident. If it weren't for Big Eyes saying that as long as the undead royal family is killed, the undead transformed by it will be I really believed its lies. Qinfeng was unmoved. When the blood bar above the head of the Great Disaster Pluto turned red again, Qinfeng started to chase again. However, what Qinfeng didn't know was that this scene was seen by a player flying in the sky. It was a female player riding a great eagle mount and circling in the sky. Although Qinfeng was chasing the boss everywhere, the female player was flying in the sky after all, so she had been observing the battle between Qinfeng and the boss. Until then, she was shocked. Shadow actually took action. The boss said that if the boss was killed, those who were transformed would never recover. That's more than 2,000 people. In order to kill the boss and get the spoils, Shadow actually ignored the lives of more than 2,000 people. It's really crazy. The female player opened her friend list indignantly and found a player code with an English name, because the female player had an eagle mount and a wide field of vision. The other party had approached her before and told her that if she provided some negative news about the Daxia official and Shadow, she could give her a lifespan. She did not agree at the time, but now she thinks that this black material about Shadow should be worth a lot of money, right? What's more, she also thinks that Shadow is so careless about human life, and this behavior must be exposed. If I don't say it, no one will know that Shadow actually has a choice. Even if he kills the epic boss, he will be regarded as a hero. But what about the more than 2,000 people? Did they die in vain? There are more than 1,000 people who fell into a nightmare state because of him. The domestic media are in the same group with Shadow. We can only expose Shadow to the outside media and reveal his cruelty and inhumanity. For a moment, this female player thought she was the embodiment of justice. So, a piece of news quickly spread on the internet The epic boss, the Great Calamity Hades, Halls, has currently transformed more than 2,000 players into undead skeletons. According to the Ba, if the boss is killed, these players will never be able to recover. However, Shadow, in order to get the spoils of the epic boss, chose to continue to hunt down the boss, completely ignoring this more than 2,000 converted players. When this news spread, there was an uproar on various forums. The Daxia official responded quickly and immediately refuted the rumor. Shadow said that as long as the boss is killed, the converted players can be restored. I hope you don't believe the rumors and be deceived by the gossip. In fact, now many people in Daxia have become extremely cautious after several times, although they are spreading this news. Not many people believe it. Most people are in a state of suspicion and wait and see. Whether the news is true or not, we will know it when the boss dies. That's right. Let the bullets fly for a while. Don't stand in line now. Hasn't there been many reversals on Shadow? They are all smeared by foreign media. That's right. Those who stood in line and sprayed Shadow earlier. Now the grass on their graves is 3 feet high, and I got the news that Shadow had already reminded not to provoke the boss. Those people were transformed into skeletons because of their greed. What does Shadow have to do with it? It's so funny. Anyone with a little brain knows which one is more credible, what the boss said or what Shadow said. Most people are very sober, but after all, there are still a small number of people who were led by the rhythm. Will we know when the boss dies? It will be too late to regret it when that happens. That's right. When the boss dies, those 2,000 people will never come back. I knew that Shadow's water army is everywhere on the internet. Can they even whitewash such a crazy behavior? My son has been transformed. I hope everyone can persuade Shadow not to kill the boss and let the boss change my son back, especially the female player who spread the news and rode the Grey Eagle. She was even more furious when she saw the discussion on the forum. She couldn't understand why Shadow did such a thing, and there were still so many people standing with Shadow and whitewashing Shadow. At this time, Qinfeng didn't know what happened. In fact, even if he knew, he wouldn't have any mood swings. He knew very well that some people were like this. No matter what the people around him said, they always had a skeptical attitude, not believing this and not believing that. Once an outsider said something, they immediately believed it without a doubt, and even regarded it as the truth. This kind of person can no longer be said to be brainless. It can only be said that he is simple and cheap, just as Qinfeng continued to chase the great disaster Hades and slashed fiercely. Osiris was a little bored and flew around in the sky, just happened to see the female player riding an eagle. Human assassin. There is a woman peeping in the sky. She looks like a fairy. Catch her and make her your wife. Osiris saw the female player and his eyes lit up immediately, and he started to communicate with Qinfeng. Catch your sister. Aren't you face blind? How do you know what she looks like? Qinfeng was speechless. Why are you so picky? Don't women have 2 eyes and a mouth? I remember her code name. It's called Peach Rabbit Eats Hot Pot Today. Osiris remained invisible and flew through the sky, grinning. She has been watching for so long. She must be impressed by your handsome and heroic appearance. Talk to her later. This thing will definitely work. Don't talk nonsense. I'll put it away for you. Handsome and heroic? Qinfeng didn't bother to pay attention to the stupid dragon. He was always invisible. How could others see him? Under his pursuit, the health of the great disaster Hades Halls continued to decrease. In the final 3rd stage, it was originally the strongest time for the epic boss, but unfortunately, the 3 strongest skills of this guy were banned by Qinfeng. The only skill that could threaten Qinfeng was one. That was the black spherical ripple skill unlocked in the 2nd stage. Originally, this skill was only released once from the 1st to the 2nd stage, but in the 3rd stage, it became a permanent skill. It can be released as long as the cooling is over. Fortunately, before releasing, the boss needs to raise its chin. Seeing the boss raise its chin, Qinfeng instantly retreated and did not give the opponent any chance. So, this brought a new idea to the boss. It found that as long as it raised its chin, it would not be hurt anymore. Obviously, the human assassin retreated to a distance to avoid the skill. In that case, the boss started to play a fake move. Whenever it was attacked, it would raise its chin. Then Qinfeng couldn't tell whether the cooldown was over or not, so he could only retreat for safety reasons. After several times, Qinfeng realized that he was being played by the boss, but there was nothing he could do. Who knows if that guy raised his chin to really use a skill or just a fake move? Qinfeng didn't know the exact cooldown time of that skill, so the scene looked a bit funny. A 20-meter tall giant skeleton boss raised its chin from time to time, as if it was saying Abba Abba, with its upper and lower jaws opening and closing, which was very funny. But every time it made this move, its health bar, it stopped descending. Very magical. Haha, idiot. Are you scared by me? The great disaster Hades, Halsey smiled coldly, holding the huge bone sword, and quickly fled in the direction it came from. This human assassin is too terrifying. It really can't beat it. As long as it returns to the great disaster sea, it can find a way to recover blood. I knew I wouldn't come out. It's too dangerous outside. Halsey wanted to cry but had no tears. He never expected that this action, which was supposed to be unstoppable, would collapse in the middle of the road. However, soon, its Aba Aba technique lost its effect on Qinfeng, because Qinfeng found, through careful observation, that there is still a subtle difference between this guy's real release of skills and the fake moves. You know, the action of really releasing skills is stipulated by the system. In other words, this guy's fake move's completeness is not enough, allowing Qinfeng to seize the flaw. So, swish, swish, swish. Shadow blades flew in from all directions. The great disaster. Pluto was horrified to find that its fake moves could not scare away the assassin. When it really released its skills, the assassin ran away again. Dude, you are dying. When the boss's health was only 1/5 left, less than 90 million, Qinfeng suddenly said, "Look at your health bar BIU. It has dropped again. Get out." The great disaster, Pluto cried. "You can't get out. But it's still possible to let you go." Qinfeng suddenly said this, which surprised the other party. The great disaster, Pluto suddenly became alert. "Let me go." "What's the condition?" Qinfeng said. "Give me the snake fang hanging on your waist, and I can spare you." That's right. Qinfeng took a fancy to the other party's old disaster snake fang. If the Stealing Saint talisman could only be used on players, Qinfeng would have given this guy a few, or even dozens, if a few were not enough. Unfortunately, the Stealing Saint talisman could not be used, so he could only try to cheat. Although the hope was slim, he had to try it. Right? Do you think I'm stupid? If I give you the things, how can you guarantee that you won't kill me? As expected, this epic boss did not believe Qinfeng's words at all, and his brain was better than some creatures. Then there is nothing I can do. Qinfeng felt a little pity. In the third stage, the boss fled faster, making it impossible for Qinfeng to kill it instantly with the Shadow of Severing and Blessing of Liberation. But as long as he kept chasing, he could slowly grind the opponent to death with one Shadow Blade after another. Just at this time, perhaps Qinfeng's words gave the boss some inspiration. The boss suddenly shouted, stretched out his skeleton palm, and took off the old Calamity Snake Fang on his waist. "Don't you want this thing? Take it." After the words fell, the skeleton picked up the snake tooth and threw it towards the distant horizon. The old disaster snake tooth, which was about the same size as a human head, was thrown into the sky and flew away at an extremely fast speed for dozens of kilometers